in this course, what we are going to be focusing on is mostly what is there on the presentation layer, which is how things look like or should look like on the browser, on a regular internet browser. It can be Chrome or Netscape, hmm, Firefox, Brave, right? Microsoft Edge, any of these. Most browsers, most of them are all similar. There might be very minor differences, but if in today's world, if it conforms to a particular standard, to a particular version, HTML, for example, the latest version which is used in today's world is HTML version 5. Okay, so HTML5 is the version which is used most commonly. I mean, in the future, there might be more advanced versions coming up. That's possible too, right? I'm not denying that. So, with time, things will adapt. So, but mostly when new features or new versions are added, they are done in such a manner that old web pages continue to work. Okay? So pages which work today should not stop working in the newer version. So that thing is always kept in mind. So if you are an engineer inside Microsoft, or if you are an engineer inside Google working for their Chrome browser, you will be worried about those issues. How to manage multiple windows, how to present the appropriate layer. There, there's also this concept of transparency which is coming in. So all these things, how they have to be managed, is something which you have to worry about as an author of one of these internet browsers, right? Okay, so TCP connections are reliable transport protocols, all right? And since they are very highly extensible, they can be used for not only just plain documents, okay, which is text ASCII based, but they can also transport multimedia like images, audio, video, all these things, other types of content, right? So text means we can only read. Images means you can see and kind of have an idea about images. Whatever. Audio is audio. So everything is different. All right. The entire setup is something broken down like this. So we will be mostly focusing on, in the beginning, we will be focusing on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and web APIs. All right. So we will not go inside the HTTP protocol as such per se. Okay, just we need to know the basics. Okay. So if you are studying any network course, you might deal with those things in there. Status, whether a particular request was successful or not, right? So when you type the address of any particular resource on the browser, what exactly happens? Okay, it's a sequence of instructions. So when you say http www.timesofindia.com, okay, just for an example, so internally it goes underneath, it goes to a web server, okay, web server which is managed and maintained by Times of India group, right? And since timesofindia.com is mapped or managed by them, that server is managed by them, the address. So anytime you can be sitting anywhere in the pretty much in the entire world. If you are connected on the internet and if you have a normal functioning, well functioning domain name server, what is that? DNS. Okay, DNS, domain name server. Then it should take you to the proper server. That's the intention. And that server should re- when as a user, basically the initiation, okay, is always done by the user. In this case, I will also interchangeably call it the client. Hmm? So the user is basically nothing but no one but the client. Client sends a request, so you initiate the request. Okay, the server doesn't send a file to the client unless the client first asks for it. All right, that's the point what I'm trying to say. So sitting on the browser machine, it can be your smartphone, it can be your laptop, tablet, anything, most of these internet connected devices, and there you initiate the request. Like, I want to talk to this server, and that sends a request. So it fetches the request. So it can be, now it can be fetching images also. Alternatively, it can be fetching the other format data also. All right, and it uses the HTTP protocol, network protocol, to fetch those things. All right. So HTTP is a client server protocol, as I already mentioned. There is a the requests are sent by one entity, right? In this case, we will mostly focus on the web browser. For example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is also an application, right? An app, smartphone app, but it's not a browser. But it also uses the internet for communication. So WhatsApp also uses the internet. A regular browser, HTTP, timesofindia.com website, newyorktimes.com, any of these, most of these websites, they always use HTTP, right? YouTube, all of them, they use the HTTP. That's the main idea. Now there are crawlers. People are familiar with the concept of crawlers. Have people heard of them? I mean, I'm not saying you should know things, but I'm just like, in case you have heard of them. Crawlers means they, 1 second. Crawlers means they move on the internet, on the web, and they fetch data. They act as the client.
Sir, do web scrapers also come in the section of crawlers?
Sorry?
Sir, the web scrapers.
Web scraper.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, I don't know all terminologies, but it's possible. Yeah, those are there. And all of them, what they do is essentially the same thing. They initiate requests, send individual requests to the server, and they look at the response. And using that response, they populate their knowledge base. So, for example, when you go to google.com and do searches, hmm, so how do you think who, like, does Google know everything, whatever is changing? If something has changed on the, let's say some new news has come out in, let's say, uh, related to political situations, let's say due to the elections or the polls which are going on. So New York Times or some international newspaper which is on the other side of the globe, they will not have any idea or knowledge about the information or the news which is local to your world or your country, right? What they do is they just come to your server and fetch it, fetch the data. So that populates their knowledge base, right? Like that. So individual requests are sent from the client to the server, which sends a response. So it's like this proxy. So in this case, for example, if you take about proxy in this case, uh, let's say you have an internet connection from Geo, Reliance Geo. Okay, so there is Geo will have a proxy server which will forward the requests ahead. So when your computer is talking, it is talking to the Reliance Geo server first. The Reliance Geo server will send the request ahead. It's like hop, skip, and jump, like that. So that server will pass it on to some central server, maybe based in Delhi or somewhere, some big place. Okay, it does not matter. Those things are not things which we worry about, but those are collectively known as proxies. Okay, that's not the destination, but it's like a proxy. It will act as a placeholder for the client. On behalf of the server, you are the client. The proxy is basically the client. And for the client, the proxy, the those routers are the servers, like that, right? So there are many more requests already mentioned, routers, modems, and so on. So this is how it is. We initiate a request to fetch the resource from the triple W using a resource locating address. Okay, we call it URI. hmm? The client in our case, we typically will call it the web browser. We'll just limit it to the web browser. I mean, things have become much more advanced than that. It's not only web browser. For example, PUBG, a game, right? Mobile game. Then fire. There are other things, Free Fire, all such games and all are there. So those things also use internet technologies. All right. So the browser sends a request, fetching the details of the HTML. So essentially, what you get, the main backbone of how things are displayed on a web browser, is nothing but an HTML document. Hmm? An HTML document in today's world, since it also has the requirement of showing fancy UI, user interface. It has to look very polished. It has to look very beautiful. All those things. So to do all these things, we use the concept of styles. And for styles, we use the concept of mostly CSS, which basically stands for cascading style sheets. It's an acronym. So we'll study HTML, we will study CSS, and the third thing we will study is JavaScript. Hmm? See, all these styles and everything is fine as long as your web page is a static page. Just a regular static page. If you just want to say hello world on your web page, then it's a good interface. Good way of writing those things is HTML. But what if you want to do something more? Let's say you want to have a user interface which has, let's say, menu items from the top. Okay, so when the user clicks on the top, he should have a rolling down. Basically, it should come out like a flap. Okay, just roll down, and the user should see different options. He can select what he wants to select. Okay? For example, imagine yourself, you're on the website of Indian Railways. Hmm? So if people have used it, then they probably know it's IRCTC. That's the name. So on that web page, it is nothing but it's a dynamic page, right? So it has a whole bunch of functionality which looks dynamical. Okay, things changing. For example, if you are on Amazon.in, right? If you have selected one item to buy, your shopping cart will have one item. Then you select the second item, then your shopping cart will have two items. Hmm? It's dynamical, or let me say dynamic, right? It is dynamic. So there is nothing like it is stupid if you, I mean, I cannot code HTML page for every possible product that Amazon is selling. Amazon is selling so many products on the internet. So you cannot be making HTML files for every product. We can probably, yeah, obviously we'll make images. We'll have image of, let's say, if it's a some kind of a dress, okay, or if it's a book, okay, name of the book, etc., or the cover page of the book, that's okay. That's an image, but not the whole page. HTML page is not saved. The HTML page is generated dynamically. If, as a user basically has selected a certain book, that thing gets added to his list of items he's willing to pay for, or he's interested in buying. Shopping cart, right? That, which is what we call the shopping cart. So that's the idea. Then then sometimes we might also want to have feeling of how to change the mouse of link. For example, in our case, we might want to have links. Obviously, HTML pages have links. So HTML pages have URLs, links. So somewhere it should have like contact us or feedback, all these things. And obviously, this is just the last thing you would think about clicking on, but basically the points where you basically are clicking behavior. So those links are nothing but they are called as URLs. U, Uniform Resource Locator. Hmm? URL. URI is an identifier. URI basically it's more like the internet network address of a machine. For example, MAC address of a machine is a URI, and so on. All right. URL is a logical name of that identifier. For example, newyorktimes.com, nytimes.com. Okay. So it's not a number. nytimes.com, what do you think is nytimes.com? It's a server, web server. But where is it? First of all, where is that server? The server is sitting somewhere. A good chance that probably it is in somewhere in New York, right? And actually, it may not be just in New York. It might be there in there might be a server which is like mirroring the content in London also. Or there might be something in Delhi also, New Delhi. Okay? Because these are big points. So lots of traffic, they handle lots of traffic. That's why we might have those mirroring servers, right? So the, all right. So there has to be some element of dynamic behavior inside the web pages. Okay. To build those that dynamic behavior requires us to use what we also call the JavaScript. Hmm? JavaScript helps us to write the or build the dynamic behavior. Earlier, we used to have the concept of applets, Java applets, and all these things. And things were very limited, right? So that's why. In today's world, JavaScript has been uh, graciously accepted by everybody. The entire internet uh, strata. All right. We will also study a little bit about web server. Web server is basically the other side of the communication, obviously. So this is from where you serve the resources. So if you have a video which you want to place it on a server in such a manner that it is accessible by people. Okay, people should be able to see it. Then you have to keep it on a web server. So the way we will do is we will make sure that first of all right now we will not worry much about hosting. Okay, the concept of hosting, we will not worry about hosting. What I mean by that is like it doesn't matter whether you should be able to say http www tiu dot edu or anything like that. We will not worry about that. Okay, so that's the last part. That is something which you will need to do when you want to publish something to the whole world in I mean, when you go out in the real world, let's say you want to start a new firm, or launch a new restaurant, okay, you want to open a cafe coffee day, right? So you want to have a website for that, so so that people can order things online, Swiggy or any of these, most of these e-commerce things, and even other things. Okay, so for them, you you don't expect them to remember the MAC address or anything like that, like not numbers, right? So they should be able to say www some name, meaningful name, cafe coffee day, CCD, whatever, Salt Lake certified, whatever, any proper name, appropriate name, you give it to it, give it to your business. And the thing is that name of the business should be mapped to your machine, the address of the machine. So you have to buy that address. That is where you have to invest some money. So that part, we just leave it from our work. Right now we will not do it in this course. Okay, so what we will do instead is we will develop the page and do everything locally. Okay, so anybody, all of you, when you develop your web page, you write your HTTP, I mean your HTML page, you write your style sheets, develop your JavaScript code, all complicated code, even if you write PHP code. So we will do those things, and we will just open it up locally on the browser. All right, because when it doesn't matter the actual behavior of the thing, make a difference only when we are working on the server side. All right, so once we launch it on the server side, I would suggest we use the Apache server. Apache, Tomcat Apache server, if people have heard of that. So Apache server is a free, so open source software. No, there's nothing to purchase or anything. Everything is free, but you have to uh, basically learn how to do the coding. All right, so that's the thing. Just setting it up is what we expect. All right, so it appears as only a single machine virtual with a single URI or a collection. See, like I was mentioning earlier in the beginning, at the top you see it says, talks about single machine, virtual machine, etc. It is because nytimes.com, when you say the address nytimes.com to a user, it appears as if it is just one machine, one server. He is just responding, right? But in reality there might be multiple machines, right? NY Times, New York Times probably is a big entity, or let's say even any local Vartaman or any newspaper for that matter. So they might have probably multiple machines to mirror as servers. Okay, the page number one was served by machine number one, then page number two might be served by machine number two. Who knows? Anything. So all these things are managed by them. All right. So it's not necessarily a single machine. All right. So they might have the same address, IP address, right? Are people familiar with the concept of IP address? IP stands for Internet Protocol. Hmm? So between the browser and the server, there are numerous computers are there, multiple layers of stack, etc., which are playing a role in the transport network, physical layers, and so on. Okay, so these things are there, understood. It's just a matter of knowing the fact that these things do exist, but we will not focus on those things in this particular course, right? We will not focus on the network aspect of internet, right? So this is not a network course. All right, so just the basic status. Okay, there's the concept of what is known as proxies. Okay, they perform functions like caching, filtering. All right, so all these things are being done. Load balancing, authentication, logging. All right, stateless. HTTP is a stateless protocol, as I already mentioned. Okay? Two separate request response pairs are not related or linked in any way. Hmm? So the same request response pair could be could happen in the opposite order as well. That's what I'm saying. So, but we all know that we require the concept of sessions. Are people able to relate with me what I'm trying to say? Sessions. So when you do shopping on web web browsers or websites, right? Like Amazon or a Big Bazaar or any of these websites. So there you have the concept of shopping carts. So dynamically you add items to your shopping cart, or you're ordering from Zomato, you're adding, deleting, etc. So anything should be allowed. Adding new items, deleting the old items, etc. So all these things they are done. But then doesn't that automatically bring in the concept of state? Why am I saying stateless then? Okay, the concept is it's happening by the concept of what is known as the cookies. All right, cookies are often used to maintain the concept of states. The cookies separate the state sessions. All right. Now, HTTP uses the TCP standard. I also already mentioned that. All right. So I will just go ahead with this. Not much to talk about in the old versions. We will not worry much about the old ones. Right now, we will be concerned mostly with the HTTP 1.1. Okay. Actually, we will also talk about HTTP 2, but HTTP 1.1 is the one is the version which is most commonly used, right? It's not 1.0, it's called 1.1. That's the one which is most commonly used. Pipelining, it's used for all these purposes. So whatever is possible in 1.1 is obviously also possible in a later version, like version 2. So so it's okay to go in the forward direction, upward direction. So I will say HTTP 2. HTTP 2 introduced the concepts of persistent connections and multiplexing. What is that? things like broadcasting, hmm, live telecast, right? YouTube also often broadcasts live telecast, basically some events live. People are familiar with that, right? Things like matches, cricket matches, and all these things, right? So that's those things happen because of persistent connections. So for them, HTTP version 2 is necessary. So we will try to do an example of those as well. Okay. So this is the basic structure. Just a second. Let me. Oh, I pressed twice. Okay, this one. We haven't done this. Yeah. Request consists of the following elements: an HTTP method. Okay. So pay pay focus on this HTTP method. It's extremely important for any request. Okay. Who specifies the method? The client. All right. It's the client who specifies the method. The method is usually some verb like get or post, or there are some more options like head, hmm, or options. All these. Okay. So options, head, get, post, all these four of them are four possible options. There might be one or two more, but we will limit ourselves to studying these four types, because if we can understand get, post, options, head, these four of them, and that's more than sufficient for most of our purposes, for developing or editing good web pages using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. uh, we should be successful in that. All right. Okay, so it's basically typically like a client who's trying to fetch a resource. Hmm? So it says get. So if it's, for example, like an image, right? So it says get the image, and the server sends the image back to the user client. There's certain things, the actual physical connection is happening obviously on the lower layers of network, but this is the directive. Get is the directive. Or post the value of an HTML form. What is post? Post is like a message, or it's like a message which is information being sent by the client to the server. Hmm? It is like a writing. Get is like reading. The client wants to read something from the server. What's the news today? Okay, I want to read the news. So it says get. When you say post, it means I'm hitting on the checkbox or typing something as a comment on the YouTube, right? Putting a comment. So it's like I'm writing something, some information. So I'm sending some information from the client to the server. That's a post. All right. In both the cases, there is a response. Okay. So, I mean, doesn't matter, whatever it might be, the response shall always be there. Often we go to the website developermozilla.org. All right, that's okay. Version of the protocol is also mentioned. See, these are an HTTP request consists of these items. Mhm. First is the HTTP method, path of the resource to fetch. So it's like it will look like HTTP colon slash slash www www dot timesofindia.com. Hmm? So this whole thing is like the address, web address. All right. So it often can also have the port. So sometimes for some purposes it requires a say different port number. Why? Because port number is like a extra piece of information. So the default when nothing is specified is 80. 80 is the default. When nothing has been said, it is 80. Hmm? If it is um, HTTPS secure protocol, then 443 is the port. All right. So there are optional headers which will convey additional information to the servers. Things like this is a, for example, have you seen web pages, websites which says this web browser is visible only inside the US, United States. It's not valid, or it's not visible to, or it's not accessible outside the US.
So
There's
like
some
Spotify.
sometimes. Hmm?
Sir, in my case, like Spotify, I was not able to open it. It was showing that this website is not available for India.
Hmm. Right. So often it has those things. So the reason it has those things is that's how the server determines whether the client request came from, where did the client request come from. Like the New York Times.com web server, which is most probably sitting somewhere in New York, okay, just assuming it is New York, okay, and sitting in India, you type http www.nytimes.com, the request goes there. How does the web server know from which country you are browsing? They should be able to trace it. In today's world, with so much of frauds and other things going on, hacking, and all these things, so those things are necessary, right? We need to be able to stop or deny service beyond a certain limit, right? All these things are essential. So to do that, this one of the headers might would be from the source from where this client machine is sitting. So when you hit enter on your browser, the browser internally will fetch or request from the client what is the address. Okay, is it in India, is it, which country is it, and so on, all these type of things. Where is it located, where is the client sitting, and based on that the web server will decide whether to pass the information or deny the information, right? So those those are the things. which are done based on that, and that information goes as a header, optional header. Header is like an additional piece of information. Is that making sense? Header. So here, for example, this is the one. First is the method. I already mentioned the get method here. Then path. This, there is not much here in the URL, so it can be just a forward slash. It means the home directory. Then the version of the protocol, HTTP 1.1, host. Then it says accept language, FR. It, there can be more languages, of course. So those are headers. All right. Now the response will consist of the version of the HTTP protocol they follow, status code. So it's important that recognize all of them one by one. It's just four of them are there. In the previous one, how many are there? One, two, three, four, five. This is the fifth one. Okay, four or five one. Five from the in the request, and in the response these four are there. Yeah. So this is how the response looks like. So it has the version of the protocol, status code. Okay, status code indicates whether a request was successful or not. All right. So 200, you see that status code 200 at the top. HTTP 1.1 is the version of the protocol. Then it has a status code 200. 200 represents success. All right, successful. So this is the general directive. One one XX is the information, only information. 2XX represents success, successful basically. 3XX represents redirection. Okay, so something like 300, 303, whatever. All these numbers will mean redirection. And 400 will 4XX means it's a error. All right. For example, if you type something, if by mistake you type something which does not exist on the web server, it reaches the web server fine, newyorktimes.com website, I mean the web server, but inside on that website you say forward slash something something, some other address after that, which does not exist, some error is there. Then you need to, the an error has to be displayed properly, right? So to show that error, it represents either 4xx, which is client side error, or 5xx if it's a server side error. For example, if you are on the Indian Railways booking site and you're trying to click on uh, booking some ticket, so if some problem is occurring because of some other issues, server connection, database connection problems, who knows, right? Anything can happen. So for that, the status code should be server error. How to interpret it on the client side is a different business, but at least from the server perspective, it's a it's an error. Just give the error message back. All right. So some common ones: description 100. Server has received the request headers and the client should proceed. 200 means it's okay. Hmm? The request is successful. It's a standard response when you when the web page is coming back successfully. 201 stands for created. Some new resource has been created. Okay, accept. You don't have to memorize everything. So things which are the most important are, for example, 200. Okay, the request is okay. That's something which is the most important. Then if you have, for example, 403, 403 stands for forbidden. For some reason, you're not allowed to read it. 404. I'm not sure why 404 is not here. Okay, so all these different numbers are there. 500 numbers are all mostly on the server side errors. Bad gateway, internal server error, gateway timeout, all these other things. Okay, HTTP methods: get, post, put, head, delete, patch, options. See, the most common are get, post, and head. These three things are the most common. All right. You don't need to know all of them thoroughly. It's okay. Get and post are the most common. We will discuss. Yeah. All right. Get request is something when the client wants to simply fetch a specified resource. Okay. Let it be an image, audio, video, anything. Then they can be cached. Okay. We will not go inside too much technical details. Caching and all will you will study mostly in the networking course. And then we should we should not use get requests when dealing with sensitive data. I will tell you why. When we actually get into those details, we will talk about these finer details. Then the other method, which is post, we use that. Okay, things for things. For example, when we are using when the user is entering the credit card number or debit card number, hmm, which is basically more like a protected thing, should not be. Why? Because a get request, hmm, transfers all the data from the client, whatever is being transferred. Basically, it's only asking for a resource. So all the client needs to communicate is just the address. Okay, so the client just says http www.nytimes.com. Maybe you give some kind of an address slash index.php, something like that. And that is itself is the resource. Okay. But often what can happen, for example, when you go to google.com and search for something, some text. Okay, you are searching, you're trying to do a translation, whatever. And what happens is there is some information which is going from the client to the server as well. Does it not? It does, right? So you have to communicate to the server that I am trying to figure out what's the translation of such and such word. Okay, perambulatory. For example, just for the sake of knowledge, I'm just saying I want to Google the word perambulation. Let's see this here. So we go to google.com. Okay, you see the you see this thing here at the top, the resource. How does it look like? Can you read this? The address? It's very difficult to read this, right? It's nothing but just junk. I don't know what is the all this so many things. I myself don't know what all these things are. The thing which we care mostly about is this. Wait. Okay, look at this. Okay, google.com/search question mark q is equal to perambulation. Hmm? So what does this do? If I hit enter now with only this much, this will also do the same job. Hmm? So how is this? What is this doing? This is a get request. This one. All right. So the only thing that is necessary to go from the client to the server is this small part which is after question mark. This part. Q is equal to whatever the name I gave. Some that was my input. The user typed that input. Right? It basically goes like as if I am trying to find out the meaning of an English word. Correct? This is just a Google translation. Right? So this is going as a get request. If I have to pass another argument, for example, I want to say r equal to something else. Hmm? I just typed something else. So I have a q parameter. Q is equal to some word, one English word. Then r is equal to something else. Okay. This will go as a, this will not affect anything. I I guess not. Okay. So thing is, this is a way of transferring multiple arguments from the client to the server. Okay, the q is equal to the first English word. This is one argument. R is equal to toffee. This is equal to second argument. See how I separated them with an ampersand. Hmm? And all of them, they start with a question mark. See this question mark in the beginning, right? After google.com/search, there's a question mark, correct? That question mark marks the beginning of arguments, which go as like is it's like you're asking the Google server to search for something. What exactly are you going to what are you asking the Google server to search for? So this is how I specify in the URL itself. All right, this ampersand specifies the, it's like a separator. Okay, there can be more, obviously. There can be another ampersand, then you can have another argument, y is equal to something else. All right, I mean, your server should be able to understand. That's all. Okay, who served this web page? It's your server. So you should design your page in such a manner that it generates the get request in a proper manner, okay, which gives a best user experience to the user who visits your web page. So if you are working for example, Microsoft or Google or any of these, any software sites or any of these e-commerce sites, you want your user to have a good experience, right? It's your business, so you want to have specify or provide the best experience. To give a good experience, you should have all these capabilities. So this is a get request. Now, what is a post request? I will just talk briefly about post. Post request means when you are, for example, entering login user ID and then you enter the password, right? And you hit the login button. So, you know, the information login is equal to, or the, it doesn't go like this. So, user ID is equal to something, doesn't matter what it is. Okay, what do you think about this? User ID is equal to something and password is equal to something. Yeah, this will work. No problem. This will work. But there is a caveat. The thing is, the password is visible openly on the address URL. Anybody who is there near you, behind the user, who's looking at the screen, he can see the password. Hmm? So the password gets revealed. So you don't want the password to be visible here like this. User ID, maybe it's okay. All right, doesn't matter. You decide that. It's a business choice. But password is not a good idea to send as a in the get request in the URL. So what is done is we don't send it like this. We might send only the user ID like this. Hmm? Or we might actually send both of them just by post search, and then we just not search in this case. We are trying to do login into a website, bank website probably. So we specify the login ID, etc., and we don't specify the user ID in the URL. It is specified in a hidden manner, okay, so that it is not visible here. It is encrypted. That is the difference in the post request. Now, post requests cannot be bookmarked, obviously, right? If I could bookmark this user ID, this login kind of things, then it will defeat the entire purpose. Okay, it will become useless, right? Post requests don't have any restrictions on the data length, so you can specify lots of data if you want. Okay, so all right, so I'll just briefly talk about this. We will mostly study HTML version 5. Okay, and HTML version 5 is backward compatible with version 1. So if a page appears fine on version 5, it will, if a page appears fine on version 1, it will appear fine on version 5 as well. Okay, so browsers are done in such a manner that they are backward compatible. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So what exactly is going on? Um, we basically use tags. Okay, they are not the same as programming languages. People have done programming, right, in C, Java. Have you done programming in Java or C? C you obviously
Yes,
must
sir.
have done. You have. Okay, so this is slightly different. This is just a tag. This is not the logic. Okay, the tag themselves, they indicate where the headings, images, links, lists, all these things are there. We write the files dot with a .html extension. All right, and mostly this, when you're sitting on a Windows machine, the machines are by default mapped to know that how to open an HTML file. When you double click a .doc file or .docx file, automatically the machine knows that it should launch the Microsoft Word application, right, to open the file, MS Word, right? So, I mean, assuming you have MS Office, first of all, then same way, when you double click an HTML file, it will launch the browser to display the HTML file. That's the whole idea. Whatever is your machine's default browser, let it be Chrome, Firefox, Safari, anything. So for our purposes, I want people to stick to a particular browser, use either Chrome or Firefox. See, because don't get used to a browser which we are not, basically, we will not be able to communicate. If you say something is not working, something is working, or how to do something, so it's better if you use something like a Chrome or Firefox. I would say one of these two. Okay. Now, browsers will read a file and looking at the file, they will know how to display it. Resources are not always written on the file. For example, an image. Okay, the image itself is a separate file. There is an HTML file which refers an image file. Hmm? The image itself is a separate file altogether, which has a separate address, of course, because it's a separate file. Then on your browser, the web page, it might be saying like display the image uh, on the right hand side, right aligned, and so on. Who knows, right? Depending on how the web page has been designed. So based on that, the browser will display the image. Okay, and YouTube also, for example, when you press T, the button T for Tom. So it basically changes the size of the image. Then if you press F, it makes it full screen, right? So these are like shortcuts, obviously. But my point is, the browser knows how to interpret that command. The browser knows that the user is asking for the image to be maximized or minimized, whatever it has to be done. Then there are other screen readers, people who have disabilities, okay, who require assistive devices. Okay, for them also, often HTML pages, web pages are written in such a manner that those people with disabilities or special abilities, they also should be able to read their pages. If you are designing a cafe coffee day web page or a restaurant website, you might want to have it as friendly as possible, right? HTML is like English, right? As you will see, H basically what they have done is mostly used English words. Okay, but you have to be get familiar with the English words. All right. Uh, right. So in the beginning, you have to worry about syntax. Okay. All right. Later, see, always you have the concept of opening syntax, sorry, opening tag and closing tag. Correct? I think it was already mentioned here. Did I? Yes. Open tag and close tag. Okay. So you should always remember to close our tag. Okay. So how do we write that? We will see. Okay. And later we will worry about the concept of semantics. For instance, if you say para means paragraph. So like that, a block. See, block basically will mean like you're trying to suggest that display a certain section like a block. Hmm? If someone is searching my page, would they be able to find the page easily? That's something which you should worry about, because you are the guy who are the author of the restaurant web page. Think of yourself as you are the author of your business web page, a startup business. So it's in your interest to see that your web page gets comes out as in the search results as best and as at the top as possible, right? HTML1 came in 1990. Tim Berners-Lee, this is Tim Lee. The main idea was to look at hyperlinks. What is a hyperlink? Uh, it's a link which is nothing but a uniform resource locator, another address. All right, a document which contains links to other resources. So the user can click on those links. Okay, since it is graphical, in today's world, browsers are all graphical. Earlier, they used to initially have only text documents. It was not really graphical per se, only text was there. We used to have those green monitors, you see. So nowadays, we all obviously use uh, regular screens. So we have mouse, or we can use our smartphones, use touch as one of the input mechanisms, and that using that establishes like a web of connections, so that building the entire web itself becomes a becomes a kind of like a temporary job. Earlier, the dynamic behavior obviously came later on, but initially things were all static, like building the home page of a website and so on. Okay, so it's required that HTML be like a common language between all platforms. The same HTML would be recognized in all platforms. So the same nytimes.com or any standard, if you say nasa.gov, for example, okay, the website of NASA, and you open it using you can open it in your smartphone also, mobile, and you can open it on your laptop or desktop machine also, obviously. So both the places that same HTML page is being served. How come it looks different on your mobile? It will look different on your mobile, definitely. If you open YouTube on your mobile, doesn't it look a little different? It scrolls vertically. Most of the videos are all arranged vertically, one below another. In the case of a laptop, they often two or three of them are on the same line, horizontal, next to one another, and then the second line and so on. All right. So how is this happening? It's the same HTML page. It looks different on different machines. How is it possible? It's happening because of the concept of what is known as, there is something which we will study here in our course, or the design responsive design. Okay, so that represents how things are different, basically device dependent, device specific. All right, there is no device specific markup. I mean, it's not like, I'm not going to say in my HTML page like um, you know something specific for a tablet or a smartphone. No, I I will try not to say such things. All right. So I will have generic things which will just internally rearrange, and based on what type of platform and the user is sitting on, they will arrange in a different manner. That is responsive design. Colors, fonts, and so on, depending on what you are doing. They should be pleasing to the eyes, obviously. I mean, not too small, not too large, and all these other aspects. 93, Mosaic came into the world. Mosaic emerged as the first graphical browser. It has a huge growth. And then came Netscape, Internet Explorer. Okay, images caused a lot of angst among the early web community because we just went in designer. Okay, so images was one of the major incentives. What everybody wanted to see, because earlier computers were, not all computers were graphical computers, right? People know that obviously. So they used to have those blinking cursors. So everything was keyboard based. There was no mouse. Triple W proliferates. Okay, now browsers came out, of course, and then they introduced different tags, HTML tags. Often in the beginning, they used to have proprietary tags like marquee, blink. So basically, it represents something specific. So maybe the Chrome author, Chrome software developer, they introduced the marquee tag. So I will develop certain web pages which will use the marquee tag, and there I will. It just says, it will say there will be a small message down there. It says it is best. This web page is best viewed with this Chrome browser or Netscape browser, whatever browser I care about. So it will just say it is best viewed on some certain browser. Okay, those things started coming out. Then came the font, BG color. These other things were also added gradually in the beginning. But but this absolutely was not sufficient. Okay, this was only the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. How we designed the pages. Man wanted to design pages much more sophisticated manner. Okay, so this was not sufficient. So man designed, we designed the concept of style sheets. All right. So standards. What about the standards? So who decides which tags to use and so on? Okay. So there is no one authority. Hmm? There is not a single authority. So there is nothing like you always have to take approval from one rating agency or something like that. No. But these three institutions take a proactive role. IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, WWC, and Web Accessibility Initiative. This is for the disabled people. This is the evolution. HTML, simple and text based. Then 93 Mosaic entered the world. 95 to 99 cross browser compatibility falls apart. So what used to work on Netscape it would not work on some other browser, Internet Explorer. Something which works on Mosaic won't work on Netscape, like that. They move towards separating content from style using HTML5s in coordination with CSS becomes the new standard. So in 2008, HTML files, CSS came into the picture. So it was developed by Tim Berners-Lee. People should remember the name of this person, this author, the initial author who started the first version. HTML2 came by IETF, then CSS1, HTML 3.2, 4.0, and in 2012 we have HTML5. Okay. Now HTML5 allows multimedia as well as semantic tags, which is the new, which is the current norm standard. Now it's a cooperation between W3C and Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group. Okay, whatever is the acronym, I don't know what is that. WHAT. Okay, that one. They have established some guidelines. Features should be based on HTML, CSS, the DOM, and the JavaScript. We will go through all these concepts one by one. We should reduce the need for external plugins. Example, Flash. Earlier, what they used to have is often they used to have the message. The message will come up on the browser. Please install the plugin. Please install a plugin from here. It will give a link. So this kind of that web page will have that message. So that would often be a little, like, what do you call it, irritating sometimes. In case the user did not have the plugin installed already, he will not see anything. He will only see a message which says, please install the plugin. Like Flash. Flash is one of the firms which makes Adobe, all these things. Adobe makes Flash, put it this way. Yeah. Okay, so more markup to replace scripting. Okay, all right. And HTML5 should be device independent. I already mentioned the concept of responsive design. So no matter on what type of browser you open the web page, you open it on your, you open web page of your restaurant, okay, which is a newly started restaurant. You open it on your smartphone, it should look beautiful. Okay. At the same time, if you open it on a laptop, that also should look different, beautiful, suitable. Basically, it's up to you to decide whether you think that looks good enough or not. All these things. So, independent of the device, your web page would be expected to display. HTML documents are translated into viewable web pages. Now, HTML was intended to facilitate content types. which is okay. So standards keep changing, but backward compatibility is something which is important to be maintained. New standards are written to handle new requirements, and browsers adopt the new standards. So, okay. Tamujit,
Yes, sir.
how much time do we have? Let me know, okay?
স্যার, টাইম অ্যাকচুয়ালি হয়ে গেছে, 1:20 বেজে গেছে।
হয়ে গেছে?
হ্যাঁ,
হুম,
হ্যাঁ, 11:40 থেকে 1:20 তো।
একটা কুড়ি, আচ্ছা। আহ ঠিক আছে, আজকে তাহলে থাক গে।
ঠিক
We'll
আছে।
continue.
হুম।
When is the we'll have it? We have two classes every week, right?
ইয়েস।
Okay. All right. I will post. Do do you think people will benefit if I post this on the
ইয়েস স্যার।
Google Classroom?
Yes, sir.
If you means the materials must be posted in the classroom, it will be very helpful for us.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Uh, Tamujit, can you take the attendance?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, স্ক্রিনশট নিয়ে নিয়েছি, আপনাকে পাঠিয়ে দেবো।
Hmm. You can send me how many people have come. Just give me a count of how many people also attended.
Hello, sir.
Hmm.
So I was asking that in this coming means tomorrow, will you be having our web technology lab?
Web
Sir will not be
technology.
taken our web technology lab.
Okay,
See,
okay.
I'm not. I'm just going to be talking about taking the
Theory
theory
classes.
classes. Okay. Uh, it would help if you ask Devashish sir.
Yes, sir. I have asked Devashish sir. He told that he will call me back at the evening.
What did he say?
He told that he will check and he will call me back, but most probably he thinks that this week no web technology lab will be taken.
Okay. See, there is a shortage of faculty
Teachers.
also, teachers
Yes.
also. Yes. So, I mean, see, we cannot assign no not so knowledgeable people, incapable people of teaching also.
Yes.
So yeah, so if it's okay, I can take it, but that will be too much load for me. So I'm not well also. That's something like an additional headache. Okay. All right then. Thank you everyone. Thanks everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Hmm. Okay. Bye.